Welcome to our first council work session after a break. I hope everyone comes back refreshed and we're breathing a little bit easier today. So we will, in following our new mandate to do items of interest and committee reports, we can begin with that. So I definitely have things to share, but I'd like to start a queue. Claire, anybody else have something they want to share? Chris, Betty. Okay, Claire, take it away.
Thank you. I don't have a detailed report, but just a couple of items of possible interest. So I serve on the Human Services Commission. I've served there as a budget committee member and now as a counselor, and my turn has come back around to be a member of the executive committee. So I'm now the vice chair of the HSC, which in theory means I might then be considered for chair next year. So in terms of this body's representation on that board, I just wanted to share that I'm now in a leadership position there again.
Great.
And then just a small item of interest, the Lane Act meets on Wednesday, and we are actually holding our meeting in Florence, which has been a recipient of ACT funds over the years, and so they're hosting our meeting. I'm going to try and travel out there myself, and I know a number of committee members will be as well, and they're going to take us on a tour before the meeting, so it'll be a nice opportunity to see how some of our Lane County dollars are getting spent out in another community. Nice. Yeah.
Nice. Chris.
Thank you. Just quickly, a few things. The Parks Committee, which four of us actually serve on, has had its second meeting. And as you know, there was really only intended to be three. But we've got into enough questions about some of the options and opportunities that might be available to us that the staff needed to do some homework. And so as such, we've decided to reschedule the third meeting and have a fourth meeting so that when we bring back what we've learned to the council, it'll be fleshed out and have as much information as possible so we can make some thoughtful decisions around it. I did get in the car and actually drive north to see the eclipse. So I got into the 100% zone and it was nice. I didn't get hit with any bad traffic, so I got lucky there. I also took the tour of the MX line, the West 11th line. It was a tremendous tour, really impressive, and we looked at the stops along the way, got off in a couple of places, and I think it's just going to be a tremendous addition to the entire rapid transit line. Also, the community court anniversary was held in September, which was a tremendous opportunity for us to recognize how far this community court has gone in 1 year, have exceeded all of the expectations they had, and have done better than what other community courts have done in other communities. So they are very deserving of our support because they have done a tremendous job. The Home Governing Consortium, which is the group that manages both CDBG and home funds, is in the process of meeting to determine how we're going to implement home and CDBG funds for the coming year. There's some conversation about some tweaks that Springfield would like to make, and so we're figuring out how we can incorporate those and the degree to which we can incorporate those if it's possible to do. And then finally, I wanted to acknowledge Jan Bowman's retirement. She had a tremendous event over at the library, and it was great to see somebody who I've worked with on and off in a variety of ways for probably 25 years, and so it's nice that she was able to be sent out in such a great way. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Betty?
Thank you. I also was on the bus tour, West 11th, saw one of the bridges, which is one of the, should be very helpful to people who live south of there. I questioned why are we delaying naming Kesey Square so long? And I assume the manager will answer that. I see we have a work session, but I don't see anything about action. And I want to know who's stealing all my pens. I don't have an extra. They keep disappearing. A question, does the city regulate garbage rates? I just noticed that it went up, and I thought the city used to regulate those.
We do, and I'll have to have somebody send something that's more detailed, but yes, we are involved in that for sure.
I just paid my bill. I noticed it had gone over a dollar mark, $1 over 15 instead of, I don't remember what it is, but it's gone up. I asked a question at City Club about when they had the meeting about homeless people. I asked if they thought that the LCC building, the old LCC building, would be a good shelter. And they did. I asked it mainly to draw attention to the possibility, and I've had a lot of people tell me that they think it's a good idea. Many people in person say that would be a great spot for a homeless shelter, and I hope that we can consider that. The manager has decided to end free parking, and many people are unhappy about that as they hear about it. I think it's very unfortunate. I think it will hurt downtown. I think the people who are unhappy are the ones who are less affluent and just ordinary people, not the shakers, movers and shakers. And I do wish we would remember, all of us, that downtown is a neighborhood that belongs to everybody, not just to the people who have businesses there, and not just to us or to the Chamber of Commerce. It belongs to everybody. It's everybody's neighborhood. Alrapa meets this coming Thursday, and I hope we have a new board member. Did you appoint one?
I can get to that. I understand we have 10 people who applied to be on that board, so I have a little homework to do. So I think the changing air quality has spurred a number of people to action on El Rapa. It suddenly seems like a cutting-edge appointment.
Okay. Well, we're meeting this coming Thursday anyway.
Yeah, my plan had been to have someone, but I don't know. I got to get in touch with 10 people, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Alan?
Yeah, I actually spent the eclipse in my ward. I didn't see the totality, but I understand the people who did see that made me wish I had seen totality. But I can't move the moon and the sun, so I wanted to attend the Jan Bowman retirement and say bye to Jan, but I put it in the wrong day. I put it on Friday instead of Thursday, so I only missed it by that much on my screen.
Like the eclipse.
Yeah, just like that much. I was 99% not there. Garbage rates. Actually, garbage rates are set. They're a cost-based rate, so the entities say this is how much their costs are, and then they add a fixed amount of rate of return, but it's all cost-based. So as their costs go up, their rates go up. And we do document whether or not it's fair and reasonable. Sustainability Commission, we had our retreat. Got a full complement finally on the Sustainability Commission with all the new appointees. So we had our first retreat, part one, at the EWEB, and went through and trying to narrow down what we're trying to accomplish, and did that to a large degree in part one, and then we're going to work on some of the details in part two in the next meeting, which is coming up Thursday after next. On MPC, mostly what we've been on MPC is related to the governor's transportation package, which passed, and learning about what was in it and providing comments and giving our lobbyists what to move forward. So largest transportation funding package in the history of Oregon, including money for first-time things like transit and safe route to schools and other things that are multimodal instead of just cars. So it did some goofy things like the higher your gas mileage, the more you pay, reversing like 50 years worth of policy and encouragement to get high efficiency cars in the name of trying to get everybody to pay something more or less equal. I thought it was a mistake. But the Governor Brown's transportation package did pass, and it's being implemented. I think, John, do you remember what our number was? We get like $5 million to $6 million a year in additional.
It's not $5 million a year. I have to come back. It was a sort of a biennial, and it ramps up. And
Yeah, it goes up.
Yeah, so we can get you sort of the totals through that 5-year period, but it's significant. I mean, it's significant
Millions.
dollars. Yes, over that period of time, there's millions of dollars that will come in for basic road maintenance and some of those kinds of things.
Yeah, right, which is helpful with our backlog and our deficit operating side. One more thing, I was reminded this morning when I was listening to NPR about the Equifax security breach they had, which affected 140 million people that have accounts, which if you take out all the children who don't have, that's like probably 75% of the people in the United States. And this is a very, very big deal, apparently. And so all of people's information about their Social Security, their driver's license, all this information's out there enough to impersonate almost anybody. You can go online to Equifax and for free sign up for their security alerts, and you can be able to do that.
You know,
but it's clogged.
Yeah, what I'd like is maybe Catherine to respond to that a little bit, because I think what we would recommend is a little bit different guidance than that, based on some things coming out of the Attorney General's office. So maybe when we come back around, maybe Catherine can talk just briefly about that, the Equinox
this is a big
follow-up.
deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you done?
Yep.
Sorry. So I have Emily and Greg, I'm wondering if you want a moment to offer items of interest. I know you've just come back from a big meeting. So let me let Emily go first and then Greg.
This is really quick, but look, the curtains are gone. You can see the trees. Thank you. I'm so happy. And also thank you for putting the dates on the CIS. That makes my life much happier. So 2 happier things. Thank you.
Great. That is great. Greg?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had the opportunity to go back last week for the National League of Cities fly-in to talk to the administration and Congress about the administration's budget proposal, and then Congress has come back to that. So if you all recall, the administration put out a rather aggressive and challenging budget proposal that included cuts in spending on things like CDBG, home, a whole list of programs that aid and benefit our citizens and our residents in cities all across the country, and particularly here in Eugene. Congress has walked some of that back, and there's going to be some negotiations. Some of you may notice while we were in D.C., Congress passed a continuing resolution so that we've got 3 more months to work on Congress and the administration as far as what the final budget will look like. Hopefully they will pass something in December that won't be so adverse to our interest. A couple of notes, because I'm the chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee this year, I led the Transportation and Infrastructure Group to a conversation at the White House with a couple of officials from the Transportation Department. Originally, we were supposed to meet with Elaine Cho, Secretary of Transportation, but because of the hurricanes, she was called away to address some of those issues that with regard to transportation in Florida. We did meet with D.B. Gribben, who's a special assistant to the president and someone who is pretty well heeled in government at the federal level, has been through a few administrations, and is focusing on the infrastructure package, the $1 trillion infrastructure package that has been proposed by the president. What we found out, we already knew, that there isn't much to that infrastructure package right now. In addition to that, there was some disturbing, what I felt were disturbing messages about shortening NEPA processes and EISs. So environmental impact statements and NEPA processes, this administration, so you know how long it has taken us to, get one corridor of MX done. It takes somewhere about 7 to 10 years. We all would like to see that process shortened or condensed. And a few years ago, under the Obama administration, FTA took strides to be able to condense that process. What the Trump administration is suggesting is a 2-year process. They want to model their process after Australia. And a lot of our concerns at the table, which we expressed, is that does this mean that they're going to strip down environmental regulation within the process? Is this going to be a gutting of NEPA? Because our communities want infrastructure, but we don't want our environment adversely impacted by not having the proper rigor in the process. And if that takes time, it takes time. But there are ways to shorten the process without stripping out the protections that the process provides. So we talked about water infrastructure, and the deplorable condition that our water system is in right now. Our transportation infrastructure right now costs an average family per year $3,400. That's in repairs, replacement costs, all taxes, all of that. And we were strongly advocating to keep the tax exemption for municipal bonds. That is a critical piece for what we need in terms of funding and financing projects. If we have to end up, if they end up being taxed, then that is going to reduce the ability of our cities to be able to implement infrastructure programs across the board. So very few details, a lot of hot air, but I think that it was a productive meeting and a series of meetings because we had meetings with Congressman. My last meeting was with Congressman DeFazio's staff. We met with Senator Wyden's staff, the senator from Colorado, Congressman Bobby. Oh God, my mind is going now. It'll come to me later, but we met with several Congress people, and so we had a very productive meeting, but we are struggling, and we got to keep up the fight, and we got to see what we can do about making sure that our concerns are heard at the table. My tenure as chairman will be coming to an end in November in Charlotte. So I think we've been very productive in terms of splitting out our work. And we have 4 subcommittees newly established, one on rail, one on transit, one on highways and bridges, and the other one on airports and seaports. So we're really drilling down into policy, and I think that you'll see some productive changes and amendments to NLC's policy structure around transportation. So that's it.
Thank you very much for being part of that and your leadership role there and your report on that. Jennifer, did you have anything you wanted to?
Oh, and Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I do have some handouts for council, but I didn't get a chance to print them off yet, but I'll do that later and get them to you on Wednesday.
That'd be great.
So I have been to one meeting for each of my committees so far. So I would not say I'm an expert, and next time I will have some,
Perfect.
just getting in there.
Perfect. So I have such a long list of things that I'd love to talk about, but I will restrain myself to a few minutes. And the big events of my August are first that I went with Sarah Maderi to London to see a few last 4 days of the World Track and Field Championship. And we met in the morning. We met with the president, the executive director of the London Organizing Committee. We met with the president of the IAAF another morning. I had a tour of sort of the athletes' experience, how the stadium is managed, how they navigate through that. And then, I spent about 20 hours watching track and field events. So I know a lot more about track and field than I knew before I went. But I think the couple of really good takeaways, we have a lot of planning ahead of us, but I felt reassured, actually, that there's a lot of things that we, because of doing the track trials in the past, that there's a lot that we know how to do, that the IAAF really is committed to the idea that Eugene will be different from London, that we don't have to try to mimic a city that's very much larger than we are, that they want this to be a sense that track has come home, and that we will do it our own way, and that we have the support to do that, and that's why we've, won this bid to do this work. And there were a lot of just basic, really helpful insights about the business partnerships and identifying how the investment in this event kind of pays back over time, and being really clear about what those outcomes should be. Their advice that we be really clear about those outcomes. Their advice that they did a really great job at mobilizing, using it as an opportunity to mobilize citywide volunteers and engage the whole community. So that was a really good thing to hear. We've been talking about that. It was good to hear how they did that. They had a really hilarious mascot that had been created as a result of a school competition. So it was sort of, when you first look at it, you think, what kind of creature is that exactly? It was Hero the Hedgehog. So that was another way they sort of engaged the community. And they had put a big emphasis on kids first, that kids' athletic opportunities and healthy kids should be, would be sort of a driving force. So again, something that we've talked about here. So I felt they were very complimentary that we're this organized this far along. So that also felt sort of good, because it feels a little frantic to me, but they were supportive. So that was a really good experience. I actually did write up notes if anybody wants my notes. And then I went from there to the Mayor's Innovation Project Conference in Burlington, Vermont. And this is, unlike the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is sort of big policy questions, the Mayor's Innovation Project is a little more down-to-earth, on the ground, kind of how do you do the work of being a mayor and how do you operate your city. And so the topics were, which was the reason I went, there was a panel on opioid addiction, on land use and inequality, on policing, and on being a net zero city. And so all very relevant to us. And then at the end, they do a quick, and there was a breakout session in which we talked about being mayor 6 months under Trump. So that was also really interesting to hear the back and forth. I was there. The Charlottesville events happened while I was in London, so I was with a whole bunch of mayors when everyone is sort of grappling with that kind of tension and potential violence in their cities. And so the conversation about policing sort of morphed into a conversation about that, which was also really helpful, good framework for me kind of coming in and getting oriented to kind of my role and how we do things. So I learned a lot. I also actually have notes from that too. So anyone who wants to I will be happy to send you my little outline of notes. And then at the end, there was a sort of showcase where each city, you could take 3 minutes to highlight something about your city. I talked about our rest stops, but there were a lot of really other great ideas. So some of which I think we might want to play with. So that was incredibly instructive and informative. I also wrote on the MX and just want to remind people that this Sunday, September 17th, 1 to 3, is the formal opening of the MX, and it'll be on the Commerce Street station on West 11th. So, good to go and show your support, and they're encouraging people to get on the bus at the main station and take a bus out to the event. So there's that. Wait, I have more on my list. I will say, partly in response to your comments, Betty, about LCC and a homeless shelter, that those conversations are continuing my sort of broader conversations about a shelter. We're meeting on the 19th, and I'm hoping that there'll be we'll kind of distill down an action plan after that. So stay tuned. Right after that meeting, I'll be able to report a little bit on where we're going to go next. But the goal of that is to actually help inform the city and support the manager's efforts to come up with a proposal to bring back to council. So that work is going on. And then one other piece, which is my performance auditor group has met. They are meeting for the 5th time today. They're putting together a matrix. I think they're doing some really solid work, which again, I hope will come back and help inform a council conversation, that it'll just be a sort of, they're creating a matrix, which, just sort of identifies a scale and scope and accountability and process, and then each for about 8 to 10 cities. And then each one will also have a profile that will answer some of the sort of unique characteristics of that particular jurisdiction and how they answered it. So that information is coming, and I actually think it's a good committee. They've done some good work. So those are my big ones. And Manager, I know you wanted to.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe Catherine can first address Alan's piece, and then I have just a couple of things.
So the Oregon Department of Justice and the Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum sent out an email that I received late last week, about Friday, that kind of highlighted what they were recommending for folks because of the Equifax breach. And one of the statements is we should all assume we are victims of the breach just because it was so far-reaching. And one of the recommendations that I was surprised to read was that they recommended not going to the Equifax site and signing up for their security alerts that they are making available, because as a term of that use, you have to waive your rights against Equifax.
They didn't mention that in their.
And the fine's not exactly free.
So, yeah, it's free. And so it was interesting, and it was the very first, the Attorney General, she sent out kind of a bulleted list of things that folks can do, and going to the Oregon Attorney General, the Oregon Department of Justice website provides a lot of information, but that was the very first all bolded bullet, and it surprised me as much as it surprises everybody else. So, but going to putting fraud alerts on, everybody is entitled to 3 free credit reports. Check your credit report, put a fraud alert on, or put a freeze on, but all that information is in there, and I certainly can forward that email to the council if that would be helpful, and then you could forward it to your constituents as you could.
What I think we can also do is just post the Attorney General statement on our website, so if somebody wants to tune into that. Of course, everybody will make their own personal decisions on what they choose to do, but we'll post that onto the website for anybody that would like to.
Yeah, and if you have any information about, I know a lot of fraud alerts cost money. If there are any free ones that people can access.
And the ones that she describes in the email are the free ones that are available. So that information is in there. And I actually, when I saw that, and I figured I'd want to be able to tell people about this, did it last night. I was like, all right, let me wade through this and see. The interesting thing is so there's 3 reporting agencies, TransUnion, Equifax, and then Experian. And you need to go to all 3 to place things on, and one of them's Equifax. So I was like, eh. So I chose one of the other 3, and then it told me it was going to report that information to the other 2. So the information, I used solely the information that was given to me in that email and was able to wade through without paying a dime for any of it. So that information is in there, and we will get it out and make sure people.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Just a couple of items, Betty, in response to the Kesey Plaza. You will have the opportunity to take the action there. In fact, we'll just have a motion there if people want to choose to move forward on that. What council asked us to do is to come back after we've done a little bit of a process. So we'll have just a short presentation around that, and then the council can choose to do whatever you choose to do with that. So the intent is to allow you the opportunity to take action on that. And then with respect to downtown parking, and I'm just nuancing a little bit, I just want to make sure people realize that there is still free parking for the first hour in the parking garage. I know that's not the same thing as on-street parking. I just want to make sure people don't think that we've also stopped that part. That's still part of it. A couple of other quick things. Obviously, as you know, many people are talking about potential changes to DACA, and so I have asked staff to take a look at any potential impacts to our employees as a result of that. So we're actively reviewing that, and I know you've put out information. Of course, there's ordinances and administrative guidance that talks about many of these kinds of things that we're pursuing, but we are also checking that as well. Through the summer, there was quite a bit of outreach into the community about the police chief recruitment. SGS or SGR is on board. They've been in town. The recruiter has been out. Some community forums, talking internally within the police department. I sat down with Mark Gistner and many others, and so that will continue through the fall through any numbers of outreach out into the community. I wanted to just briefly mention, the airport continues to have month after month record flights, and over the year, 12-month period, they actually, for the first time, had more than 1 million, anticipating more than 1 million flights. So it's a pretty big deal. And the other piece that I think is interesting in that is, while some of it, they're new customers coming into the area, many of them actually are because people are choosing to fly out of Eugene as opposed to travel to Portland. And so the catchment area for Eugene is increasing. And I think that's a significant piece, because what it says is it's cost competitive and it's very user friendly for people to actually fly out of Eugene. And so that's a real good piece. And then lastly, as you know, because of some things that are going on in our executive team transition, Christy Hammett will be the interim assistant city manager for the next many months. Sarah is going to be the interim public works director, and then Catherine, as you know, will be spending time as our city attorney. And so all of that's sort of moving. Same players, just kind of different positions at the moment. So.
Yes, okay, so I have Greg and then Betty.
Just real brief comment, Mayor. I just want to kind of alert council that, and I don't know if anybody's addressed it before I got here or not, that I would like to bring forward a resolution concerning DACA for your consideration here in the next few days. So I've been kind of working on that, and I hope to have it done by Wednesday, if not by next week.
Okay, that's great. And as the manager, just to respond to that, as the manager mentioned, I did release a statement, and I will read it at the public meeting tonight. So we'll sort of get out there and then have your resolution on the table. Will be great. Betty.
I just had a comment on the airport. I think that is good for the environment too. There'll be fewer cars on the road if people fly out of Eugene.
Right.
So it's not only good for the airport, it's good for the world.
So true. So true. My son actually made the mistake of flying in and out of Portland, and he regretted it. Took him forever to get home. So, okay, I think that wraps up the items of interest, unless there are any other things. So I think we are ready to roll into a process session.
I'll just turn over to Mia and to start leading us through this.
Hi all, I'm Mia Carriaga from the City Manager's Office. We're glad to have you back. It's not the same without you, so welcome back from break. Several months ago, you agreed that you'd like to have periodic process sessions to talk about the way that you do business, and so I'm here tonight to bring up a few informational items and let you know of just a couple of minor changes that I hope will help you do your work, and then you'll have an opportunity to discuss your operating agreements or anything else that you'd like. So I'm going to briefly talk about communication and correspondence as a reminder about all of the ways that staff communicates with you and how that information gets out to the public. There are a couple of changes to how we'll follow up to items that come up in work sessions in your meetings. We have a new tentative working agenda, which we'll share. And then finally, we'd like to have a brief conversation about the logistics of your council retreat. So there are a number of ways in which staff communicates with the council, and some are both intended for the audience of you and the public. And the first is the City Council newsletter. We send that out every week, and our intention is that that's shareable. So we send you an email and then you can either forward a link or forward the email so that folks in the community know about the good work that we're all doing. Secondly, we often communicate with you via email, and that's normally from either the city manager or staff to the public mailbox, which is viewable at our office at 125 East 8th Avenue, and anyone can come read those emails anytime they'd like. Obviously, we communicate with you through agenda item summaries in preparation of work sessions and action items. And then finally, staff will often send memos which are included in your packet, and those are always available on the website too. So all of those are always available to the public in various ways. And if anyone has questions about how to reach those documents, they can always call our office. And then obviously we also communicate with you in person. So in meetings such as this one, we have committee meetings and work sessions, and then all of you have regular ongoing meetings with the city manager. So those are many of the ways that we get information to you. So we have heard from you that it would be helpful to know more about follow-up items that you bring up in work sessions. And so as a result, we will be tracking follow-up items in a memo that will be sent to you each week. It will be issued from the city manager's office and included in your packet. And the intent is to identify questions and items that you bring up by topic, and then we'll identify the responsible department that you will hear from as follow-up to that request or question. So that follow-up may come in various forms. We may need to schedule an additional work session. You may get a phone call. It could come via email or a memo. It depends on the nature of the request and the interest of the body and the public interest in any given topic. Sometimes we get smaller items that don't require a full communication, and others are much larger. So that's something that you'll start seeing beginning next Thursday. And so a week from this Thursday, you'll see all of the follow-up items that we capture from this week's meetings.
And that's just a sample.
That's the sample, yes. Yeah.
I don't remember asking any.
We pre-asked the question.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And the next item is the new tentative agenda. And so I'll pass, it's coming at you here. And as a reminder, the process for the tentative agenda is outlined in your operating agreements. The mayor and city manager work together to set the agenda, and there are a number of ways in which items can be placed on the agenda. So either through a work session poll that one of you issues, it may be, as I said earlier, as a follow-up to a work session discussion that you had previously, and then you can use the process of talking with either the city manager or mayor as identified in your operating agreements. Just before this meeting, the mayor asked me to recap what you had agreed to about motions that are not identified on the agenda, how you'd like to bring those up. And the discussion that you had most recently, you decided that you'd like to bring that up during items of interest. And so that's another way to have items placed on the agenda if you bring it up there and bring it to the mayor's attention. So this is really a tool for the council and the public. We have a lot of folks look at this. It's available at the bottom of every city council newsletter and available on our website all the time. We do get a lot of calls about this, and then staff use it too. So staff in the departments refer to this on a regular basis. They share it with all of our boards and commissions. We know that neighborhood associations share this document regularly so that the community can stay up on the work that you're doing and the topics that you're thinking about. So this is just a new format. You'll start seeing this in your packet this Thursday. It's the same information, by the way, same different look. So that's all we have formally. The other thing that we'd like to get a sense of, you have all expressed interest in having either a retreat or a goal setting session, and we need to set aside a fairly large block of time to do that. And so we'd like to just get a sense from all of you as to whether or not you'd like to use existing meeting time or find a Saturday or a Wednesday night or something like that. And then I think the mayor, I'll turn it over to the mayor because she has some comments too.
Right. All right, so thank you very much for that, and thank you for this. It's sort of bright and beautiful, kind of fun to have a new format for that, and I appreciate the breakdown. Are there folks who want to be in the queue with comments? Alan? Greg? And why don't we start with your comments, and then we'll see where it goes. Alan?
Just a clarification on the motions. I can't remember exactly what we did, and maybe it would be helpful if we could recount that back to the council from the minutes, but we decided we would do that in items section, and can we take action in that same session?
I don't think you specified whether or not you could take action.
Well, we wanted to have adequate notice.
Yeah, I think the intention was that motions were coming in various ways, either through conversation with the mayor or emails or conversation through the city manager. And so I think the agreement was to standardize, you bring those up in items of interest.
Right, and then we also had a conversation about notice about that. Because sometimes they come in Sunday night, Monday morning, and nobody's seen them, and that's the same as no notice. I can't remember what we decided, if we decided anything.
Well, I think the operating agreements currently state that you will give as much notice as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That means nothing.
Right.
Okay.
Greg?
Yeah, I just want to, address the idea of a retreat. I remember when I first came on council several years ago that we had I think it was a Friday evening, all day Saturday retreat where we talked about goals and objectives for council and kind of a broad scoping of where we were going over the next year or couple of years. And if I remember correctly, we did that like in February. Maybe it was 2013 or 2014 or something in that neighborhood. But I would like to suggest that, maybe it's time that we revisit that. We have 2 new additions to council. And I think it would be a very good idea for us to plan a retreat maybe right after the first of the year so that we can maybe do a reset in terms of what our goals are for the next couple of years and, take a long look at, the directions that we're going with various initiatives, like Alan said, kind of, reminding us, what we voted on is kind of helpful because after a while, all of it washes over you. But to, keep us, on track with where we're going.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I would reinforce everything that Greg said. From the earliest time I was on the council, I always placed a very high value on our retreats or goal-setting sessions or whatever you want to call them. I would discourage us from trying to use regular meeting time. I think they work better when we create a different kind of environment. We don't have to go out of town or anything, but I think having a different setting or a different environment is conducive to a better process. It doesn't have to be a Saturday, but if that's when everybody can get together, I'm fine with that. I also think we need to be able to take the time necessary to peel the different layers of the onion to get down to the really substantive stuff. I think when we've done it before, to me, it's been very valuable when we can work our way through it in a kind of deliberate way. Part of what we need to do is to revisit some of the things that we've agreed to many years ago that we've never revisited for a number of years. Our vision, our values, our objectives, and our goals. We haven't talked about those for years, literally. Do they need to be reaffirmed? I'm not looking at a lot of change, but those are the blueprint for the action plans that we do. And if those are no longer relevant, we shouldn't keep creating action plans for goals that we've not revisited. Some of the work we did with Bob Chadwick in terms of how we work together, and I'm not just talking about the council, but the council and its executive staff, I think was very, very important. Some terms that we use to this day, such as best outcomes and worst outcomes, were things that came out of that kind of discussion. And for me, it's been very helpful in managing expectations, which is what I think a lot of what this kind of process session does. It's also an opportunity for us to check back in on are things going well vis-a-vis the policies we're setting. Something that Greg mentioned, which was actually interesting, would be if we were able to review the decisions we've made in the previous year. And were those decisions consistent with the goals and values we've set, or are we just kind of making decisions willy-nilly that don't seem to follow any sort of constructive trend or are working towards a common goal? That would be helpful as well. I'm not looking for an all day because I kind of wear out after a certain amount of time. But I think a half a day for me is perfectly reasonable. And if you wanted to do half a day more often, to me, that's a better use of my energy than saying, let's do a marathon full day and I'm passed out by the time you get 3/4 of the way through it.
Right. Claire?
Yeah, thanks. I agree with much of what Chris and Greg just said. I think a meeting that's not part of our regular agenda schedule is right. I agree with that. I think I remember, I think the first year I was on council, we had a retreat down in what was the Jacobs Gallery space or nearby that. And I found it really useful, particularly being a new counselor. But I also just could see it was of value to everybody and not just me as a relative newbie. So I agree. I'd be very willing to, spend part of a Saturday doing that. I like the suggestion that maybe not one long marathon, but maybe if we would consider even doing something twice a year, maybe a longer one and a shorter one type of thing. And I agree, kind of touching base. It doesn't have to be a wholesale reconsideration of things, but touching base on our vision and values, touching base on what our operating agreements have been, touching base with relationships with city staff and each other. I think those are all really valuable things, and I think staff, has a lot of skills and talents to help us craft something that would be worthwhile for everyone.
I just want to toss in a couple of comments of my own on this. I do think it would be constructive for us, and the timing we can discuss. I could go just a little bit farther in this sort of, not just the sort of broad scope of how we do things, but have some thoughts on some specific things that we might actually want to look at in terms of processes that would be helpful in a retreat. And one particularly is the boards and commissions, and both what we see as the purpose for those commissions, but also, very importantly, what is the counselor's role as a liaison with those boards and commissions, and particularly helpful to new counselors and to me as a new mayor, but I think for everyone because it's inconsistent. And I also know that, I'm facing a season in which there are new board and commission assignments, and some of you have expressed a desire to change. So in some ways, I would like to see at least a first half-day retreat happen before the end of the year, because I would like, personally, that conversation that could actually help me inform and come up with a sort of a working template for the boards and commissions. So I just put that out there as a thought, as a sort of a kind of immediately functional kind of process piece. There's another piece that it might not happen necessarily within this retreat, but sort of specifically, again, the idea of some of the specific roles, the Intergovernmental Relations Committee being one. It could be that we would come with some structure around, looking at that process again. Again, we might want to do that not as part of the retreat. It could be another way of doing it, but in anticipation of a short legislative session this year, we might want to be sort of ready for that with having reconsidered what that process looks like and make sure everyone feels comfortable with, how we're considering things. So it could be IGR. Ethan's not here today, so it could be that that's an IGR meeting to then talk about that and a council leadership thing. But just putting that out there is something that I think we might look at specifically. And then my favorite topic, which sank instantly on my very first work session with you, but I'm bringing it up again, which is, one of the reasons to do a sort of a goal setting could be if we wanted to try and think again about having some clusters around the issues that we're addressing, some thematic themes by quarter, or some identify that we are going to spend 1 month out of the quarter sort of focusing on a specific set of issues that if we had a goal setting session and council said, this year, there are, what we see coming down the pike are these 4 pretty significant issues that we need to address this year. And we could say, since we have those 4 addresses, that 4 issues, that we are going to try and cluster our conversations so that we have more we're not having to refresh our memory about what we did 6 months earlier because we actually just did it the week before. And so that would be another reason maybe to do this a little bit ahead of the turn of the new year, to kind of look, at what's coming, kind of where we've been, but also what's coming for the coming year that is time sensitive, that we're definitely going to be making those decisions. So that's another reason I put it out there maybe sooner than later, but would welcome anybody else's thoughts about sort of specific things that we, or how we might go about doing that. Those of you who've been through a retreat before, and I haven't, so. Any other thoughts? Any thoughts on timing? Because I think the staff has been trying to look at possible dates. But enough, yeah, Eddie.
I thought this meeting was about the operating agreements. Are we going to discuss those?
Well, we can, yes.
Oh, I thought that's what we were doing.
Yep.
I'm confused.
Well, we can, if there are specific aspects of the operating agreements that you want to discuss in this meeting, we have time to discuss those.
That's also an agenda item.
That's also, right.
Well, it's...
Oh.
Well, personally, I think the retreats have been mostly a waste of time, but, and they aren't retreats. I don't like using, bothers me when we say something's a retreat when it really isn't. It's not a time when we retreat from work, and I don't know. But operating agreements, one thing I noticed, I was glad to see that we had said that we would have items, and we're doing it now, but that's something we changed some time ago and then forgot about. One thing in the operating, is it okay to talk about how we operate?
Yes.
One thing I think would be good is if there's going to be an extra meeting, it shouldn't happen unless everyone on the council agrees to it. We all set aside meeting times that we know we have, and sometimes you may have to miss those, but if you have to miss that, that's a different matter. But if there's an extra meeting, I think everybody should agree to it before it's set. And when there is something else that I would like to, and I've mentioned this before, and it happens sometimes, but if there's important information to get to the council, it's important that you make sure that every person got it. Just sending out an email or leaving a telephone message doesn't tell you that the person got it. For instance, lately there's been this massive amount of email from one person, and I have almost deleted things because I'm going through and deleting those one after another. And sometimes things just get lost. But I think it's important to say, let us know that you got this, if it's important. Things in the operating agreement, one thing I noticed that we have up to $100 for memberships in civic organizations. That's been the same for more than 20 years. It says for 2 organizations that no organizations cost less than $100 now. I think we might want to change that amount, since I know it's been there 21 years at least. 100, it says up to 2 organizations. I thought, what? It was never for that. Those are just some things I see in here that I think we could change, and I thought we were going to talk about things that might be changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think partly I'd like to see anyone bring anything to the table that they want to talk about. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Emily?
Thank you. I remember in January when we talked about having a poll to get a work session, and the printout says we have 5 business days, which seems totally reasonable to me. We all read our emails pretty often, but we talked about having 2 weeks, which is what we're using now, and that is not what's in our agreement at this point.
Okay. We can amend that. if you will.
And did we vote to have it 2 weeks? I can't remember.
There wasn't a formal vote on that particular item, but if there is interest, we can certainly bring you an amended.
Well, I'm interested in keeping it at 5 days, so I don't know how that works. Do we vote on a change like that?
I guess, what does it currently say? I guess what
5 days.
currently says 5 days, so if you would actually want to change it, then we should bring something. Unless you choose to change it, then we're going to keep it at what is the current
But in
policy?
January, we decided to change it. We didn't vote. We're acting on it as though we did.
My memory.
Right,
I'm not
so-
sure
We
what the
changed it to 2 weeks.
So staff practice is to try and hear from everybody, even if that takes more than 5 days. And so we'll often reach out to individuals to make sure that they, as Councilor Taylor just requested, saw the work session request. And that does sometimes take more than 5 days. If all of you choose or agree to not extend that beyond 5 days, regardless of who we have heard from, we can certainly do that.
I just think it should be clear in our written document what the parameters are. I still have trouble when the agenda items flip around a lot because I want to research them fully, and if I've done that and then it gets put off for 2 months later and I'm busy doing other things, I've got to redo that. But also whatever it's been switched to, I now haven't had the notice to really do the in-depth research I might want to do, and also to speak to my constituents. So I have a problem when we switch them, especially without a lot of notice, okay, in 2 days or today or in a week. And I just would like there to be something better than that. And I still have some troubles about bringing things to the agenda or motions with the vague as early as possible, which can mean zero. It's just really vague. I find it very unsettling, and as we remember, I felt blindsided unfairly, and it affected my ward. So it's still on my shoulder. I didn't like that. And I don't know what the solution is, but as soon as possible means nothing. And I guess that's it for now.
Okay. Chris?
Thank you. In keeping with the mayor's request, I would agree we should try to schedule this as quickly as possible. So that would be my recommendation. With regard to contact, I agree. Sometimes emails will be sent out and it'll either go into a spam folder or I won't get it, and people may assume I've gotten it and I haven't, and that's a challenge. For those that are getting endless emails from DWIC, just pick one, block sender. You may have to do it for several days, but now all of my DWICs go automatically into my spam folder. So he's got several email addresses, so you just have to pick and block each one that comes in, and eventually they'll all wind up in spam. It takes a while, but believe me, it's hundreds of emails are now going into spam that I don't have to look at. With regard to notices on motions, I also agree. I'm very troubled when someone brings a motion up that the public has no idea is coming up. They don't read our emails, so even though you inform us that you're planning on making a motion, the public has no idea. And so it still comes up at a meeting and people are going, well, I had no opportunity to, talk about this. So we need some sort of a way to propose motions that allows the public to at least be aware that these motions are coming forward. And I think 24 hours notice or an email sent to other counselors, while it may be legally something that we can do, I don't think is really good public governance. With regard to whether or not we should have meetings or have extra meetings or whatever, I think the same system we use for everything else. The majority of the council wants to do it, then we do it. That's how we do everything else. And if you made it, well, every single counselor has to agree, that's awful close to a blackball situation where you can block anything the council wants to do. I'm just simply blackballing it, and I'm nervous that might not be really the best thing for us. So I think using the majority like we do with everything else is the best way. And once the council agrees to a meeting, then we do our best to try to schedule it when everybody can be there. I think it's important that we proceed with the will of the council. I know that sometimes I lose when I wish, I could blackball something, but even when I lose 7-1, I still go with the will of the council. I still think that's the way we should go. So I think we need to be very careful to make sure councilors do indeed get that communication, and just relying on email is not always the best way to ensure that I've gotten it. I've noticed a few on reply that I say, well, I never got the original email. I'm now reading it for the first time in somebody else's reply to it, so that makes me kind of nervous sometimes.
Claire?
Thank you. So yeah, other councilors' comments have sparked thoughts in me. I appreciate Councilor Taylor bringing up the amount available for joining organizations, but it sparked a question in that I've had. So I'm on a listserv, an email listserv for an advocacy organization, Transportation for America, which sometimes has sign on to this letter to Congress, and I followed their link the other day and I went through it all, and then it says, are you authorized to speak on behalf of your organization? And I said, no, I don't believe I am, since this council had not taken a vote on the particular thing that I was going to sign a support letter on. So I don't necessarily need an answer right now, but I was wondering if there's some parameters or some guidance that could be offered to us when we are in those kinds of situations where we are doing something in our capacity as a councilor, but we're not necessarily speaking for the whole city or the whole council, but we are nonetheless a representative. And if there are some guidelines that could be offered about, are you speaking on behalf of this organization? Are you authorized to do that, and where we might be and where we might not be?
Yeah, we could be happy to send something.
And there we go. And then to revisiting the question on how we did have a lengthy discussion on responding to work session polls, and I believe we decided that we wanted a longer amount of time to ensure that everyone had a chance to read the poll and respond. I actually believe 5 days is too short. I mean, even in the business world, typically it's, 7 working days or sometimes even 10 for certain things. So I think it would be a good idea for us to revisit that discussion and take a formal vote on what we think the right length of time is. Because they are important. We don't want them lingering, but we also don't want them to be so fast that they die because 2 counselors didn't even see them, and then we went past the 5-day mark, and now that counselor has to go back around through the whole process again.
Okay, any other comments, Alan?
I think a retreat before the end of the year is a good idea. I'd like to use existing meeting times as much as possible. I think 5 days is too short too. I think we should fix that and have a specific number in there, probably around 2 weeks is I think what we basically kind of decided on, and what we do in operating principle as well. And then finally, I was frustrated by the conversation we had about adequate notice and no surprises, and I too would like to nail that down and say, for instance, we could say that you can bring it up in items, but if you, unless you have 3 or 4 days notice, you can't vote on it until the next items. So that would give people an incentive to give 3 or 4 days notice. So for instance, if you maybe even a Thursday deadline, close of business, because then you'd have the weekend when most of us look at our packets after we get them on Thursday evening to look over things. Might be a good suggestion.
Okay. So if I can summarize, it seems like there's sort of 3 issues. There's the retreat, whether the will of the council is to have a retreat, and then we can talk about dates. The second one being revisiting the work session polling timeline, and if we need to vote on that, so that's really clear. And the third one, whether we need to circle back around on another conversation around motions and, if we want to create a little more concrete guidelines around those motions. So do we need to kind of vote on each of these so that we have a record, or how should we proceed?
This evening you will be acting on a resolution that would be adopting amended operating agreements. One option that you have, and I'll just pick the easiest, lowest hanging fruit one, which is changing 5 days to 2 weeks. I could provide a motion, Councilor Zelenka, for you to make today to just amend that, and that one could get done tonight, if that's the will of the council.
What about the other one?
The other ones seem a little bit more nuanced regarding the motion, if that's the firming up around that. If there's specific direction you can give me this evening, that was one that sounded like it actually needed a little bit more discussion. But if there's some specific direction you can give me, I'm happy to write up a motion for that one as well.
We don't have notice requirements.
Pardon?
We don't have notice requirements about that because it's not an ordinance.
Correct. No, we don't. It's just by resolution, so we can certainly do that this evening. Mm-hmm.
Claire, do you have a comment?
Yeah, and Councilor Semple has
and
a hand up too. I would be all right with discussing and changing the length of time for work session poll reply. I would ask us to not take up the other question this evening. I think, one, we're missing one of our members who I think would have a lot of opinions about that. And I would just like some time to think about that some more. So that would be one I'd prefer us to come back to another night or another work session on.
Okay. Emily?
Thank you. I'm fine, sort of, with the 2 weeks for the poll, but it really concerns me when what we're doing doesn't match our document. And Betty's concern about can we get a raise for dues? Can we put that in now, or do we have to have a work session on it? Is there a budget item?
What I would suggest is maybe we should come back with a suggested amount. I don't have any idea what the amount of dues are these days in some of these organizations, and so we can come back with sort of a suggested amount that might make it easier what you would actually like to set it at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could, so just in response to Emily's comment, we are talking about making it match. We're talking about an amendment so it does match. So I'm getting the sense that that's a good idea, that we proceed tonight with an amendment to the operating agreements. Okay.
Have that at your table.
Okay, so that takes care of that piece. We can come back and maybe schedule another, and it could be if we have a retreat that this continued conversation about the motions, that would also be a topic we might address when we have a little more time. And then finally, the retreat. I'm just wondering if do we need to vote to have a retreat? Can we want to just a sense of all in favor of scheduling a retreat goal setting before the end of the year? Do I need does anyone disagree? Do we need to show?
I disagree.
You disagree?
And has anyone thought about how many things happen between now and the end of the year? Like Thanksgiving and Christmas and...
Right. Do you, yeah, Greg?
Well, Mayor, I'll just reiterate what I said before. I mean, traditionally, we've done it at the beginning of the year, usually in February is my recollection. So, and I think that might be the point where we would be, more apt to be positioned, because as we come to the end of the year, we're running into the holidays. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, et cetera.
True. Okay, I've got Alan and then Chris with a comment.
Well, we were going to do it in February, but we decided not to do it because we wanted to get the new counselor on board. So we waited purposefully to not do that. So I think having it between now and the end of the year sometime, we don't have to cram it into December 20th, but I think that's a good idea. I'd like to have it during regular work times, and the schedule is pretty open. There are a lot of blank spots between now and the end of the year on the agenda. Like 75% of them are open right now.
What I would just mention about that, they're open. The list of possibilities is actually far exceeds the number of slots, and so part of that is we're just, sort of gathering through all of that, and so you'll. We shouldn't have, they're not all going to be open, but if you want to schedule a a goals session during a regular council meeting before the winter break, we will work with the mayor to figure out the time to do that. So we'll make that a priority if that's what your desire.
Chris?
I also recall we have done our goal-setting sessions in January or February, and that would be okay. I think what you wanted was the ability to talk about board and commission appointments, and it's certainly possible to have a work session on board and committee appointments. We could set one of our work sessions on a Wednesday to talk about board and commission appointments and get that item taken care of, because I agree that's time sensitive. And then we could have our regular, more general goal setting session. I would recommend a half a day, 4 hours. I think if you try to do it in 2, you're only going to get partway through. So I think we need like a 4-hour block to do it. That's why I think a Saturday or a Friday afternoon or something like that would work. And I realize that in some cases that's an imposition, but to me it's important work, and we need to do that. And if February is a better time to do it, I'm okay with that. Which then leads me to another thing that just occurred to me under the heading of no surprises, and I get upset when agenda items get moved, is we should be much more realistic about how long agenda items actually take. I will look at a work session agenda and it will say topic A 45 minutes, topic B 45 minutes, and I look at it and I go, there is no way these 8 people are ever going to cover any topic in 45 minutes. And what happens then, whoever is B can't get their topic on, and then they have to go to another meeting and everything gets moved around, and that can be upsetting both for them and for us. So I think what we need to do is kind of mentally accept that most items we talk about are usually 60 minutes or more. And if we finish early, that to me is better than somebody having to leave without making their presentation. So I think we should be a little more realistic in terms of how long agenda items take. Even when someone during items of interest brings up a topic, sometimes items of interest can go, as it did tonight, more than 30 minutes because stuff comes up. So I think we need to be realistic about the fact that this group of people likes to talk and has important things to say, and so topics will take much longer than we have previously thought they would. I just build that into our thinking about agenda items.
Right. Okay. Emily.
Thank you. I'd like to remind you all that budget starts after the first of the year, and that's another bunch of meetings on top of what for some of us may be new boards and commissions. I'm fine with a half-day retreat. If we did it before Thanksgiving, we wouldn't be rushing into the holidays, and we'd have it done. Thanks.
Right. Good thought. Betty?
I want to say February is a dull month, so it's a good time to have, if we're going to have a retreat, it's a good time because nothing else is happening. But I think a regular meeting devoted to boards and commissions is a good idea. I also think maybe we should consider going back to 2-hour Wednesday noon meetings, which is what they were until, well, the first 10 years or so I was on council, they were 2-hour meetings. And that seemed like a more reasonable amount of time. But I still think that if you add an extra meeting, it's not the same as a majority deciding on an issue that they know is going to be at a meeting. An extra meeting is something that people have to rearrange their lives for sometimes. And if we're going to have more meetings, maybe we should agree to schedule more meetings. But if you put in one that wasn't scheduled and someone has set aside the time for all the meetings that we are committed to, I don't think it's right to have it if even one person can't go. It's not the same as one person losing on an issue. It is not the same at all. Thank you.
All right. So I think this is a good suggestion, Chris, about just having a regular work session on the boards and commissions, so we just take care of it. And then maybe we just look at the calendar and see what's realistic for a retreat and come up with some dates and poll the council and then just see where we land. I don't know if you have a...
One of the things is maybe the council leadership can help in some of that conversation about potential timeframes, dates. Right. Do you have it during a regular meeting, not regular meeting? topics and agenda and some of those kinds of things. So that might be a discussion that we have
Right.
during the council leadership
Sounds
conversations.
Good. That sounds good. Yeah, Alan.
I would suggest regular scheduled meeting time. If we're going to do 4 hours, then we can go 5:30 to 9:30. We do that on a regular basis anyway. It would just take out one of the meetings. And like Betty said, people schedule themselves around the regular scheduled meetings. Adding something in can be difficult to get everybody there. Then I would want to have a conversation about, I agree that work session on boards and commissions would be a good idea all by itself. So if we're going to do a retreat and we're just going to talk about reviewing the goals that haven't been reviewed in a really long time, and then what else would we accomplish besides that? To me, the thing about goals is if they're just hanging out there in limbo and they're not connected to anything, then they're just goals hanging out in limbo. And so if you create goals, they need to have connection to policy, and this is where John comes in, but they need to be able to, you need to be able to track the goal to a policy, to a strategy, to a program, and so that there's a linear linkage between all of that stuff, so that what the council thinks are high priority items, then those become what the city works on. And that's exactly the way it should be. And we've done that before where we've pulled the council to get what are your 4 big items, and then we've listed them all, and then we kind of narrowed it down if your item didn't get a lot of support. So, and yeah, too bad. So that works well in a retreat setting as well. So if you went over the goals and set them up so that then they had some linear trajectory through the organization, I think that would be really important linkage.
I agree. It seems to me that it might be helpful to look at what was done in the last goal setting session that the council did, and so using that as a template, and then maybe also a little help around what some of the big things are that we're facing in the next year, calendar year, just so that we sort of mesh the two and see if there's some. And so I am interested in the idea that maybe as we talk about dates, that we also do a little bit of polling for counselors to sort of think about what they want to accomplish and what the issues are, and maybe sort of collect some of that data would be helpful.
I think so. I think it would be a good idea to connect back to the last time. For those that were there, you might remember economic development was one of those big items, and what came out of that was actually the Baker's Dozen, which was, I think, named by Greg. But it was the Baker's Dozen that actually came out of that said, based on all of that work session or that retreat, here are the items that you said you wanted to sort of focus on from a related economic development process. So we're continuing to move those forward. In fact, you'll have some updates on some of those coming up pretty soon. So that's actually worked well in the past with some of that.
Just one other thought that occurs to me, which is that we don't always have something scheduled for public hearing nights. We often do, but not always. And so that is another possible way of, being able to pick up a topic that we just seem not to be able to schedule the time for. It could even be a retreat day that we would use a public hearing day for that. So on a Monday. So just putting that out there as a scheduling thing. Okay. Alan.
One more. This is different. Relating back to the tentative agenda, one of the things that I wanted to see on it were the list of things that weren't handled completely within the work session, so they're still hanging out there to come back. And I thought I would see that here, where we have the work session polls approved, but we don't have unresolved work session items. I'd like to see that added to, or somewhere, where we could keep track of that stuff, because some things like exclusionary zoning or nuisance ordinance, they drag out for a long time, and they just seem to not get tracked and get back onto the agenda and I think if we had a list of the ones that are still out there, then that helps us put them on the agenda, keep them putting on the agenda, keep them up in front of us.
Yeah, a couple of things. So the new memo that will come out every Thursday capturing the follow-up items from the week previous will capture some of that. And then in addition, we will add a second section which includes work session polls that have yet to be scheduled but that didn't necessarily go through the polling process. So that would include work sessions that are as a result of a follow-up item from a previous work session, like inclusionary zoning.
What are you going to call
Did that make sense? Well, so we have a section here for approved work session polls, but often out of work sessions, we'll discover the need for an additional work session. And so we'll place the unscheduled work sessions like those here too, so that you can see them on the list.
Additional work sessions needed?
Yeah. Okay.
Be a good topic.
Emily?
Yeah. Thanks.
An example might be the drones that were on the agendas when I started until now, and yet they've disappeared.
That's good. Do anything about it.
We don't get to.
Because we can't do anything.
Well, then we should say we're not going to talk about them if we're not, because I've been wondering since January, what are we going to say about drones?
Okay. All right. Claire?
So I actually have a question about the tentative agenda and this public hearing with no public hearing scheduled. What are the chances that we will actually have a public hearing next Monday? Because we couldn't notice it in time, correct?
Right. And we don't know of any items that require a public hearing.
Right.
We'll use that time for.
Okay.
So, yes,
wanna call that out.
we do have the option, right, of saying we're going to schedule.
Yeah, we generally wait until after the 7:30 meeting on Monday nights to cancel the next week's public hearing.
Thank you.
Just also, with some items, there's also a staff lead time needing, so it's very difficult to tell staff, hey, tomorrow you're now on, right? And so,
Right.
so it's the same way as
Good point.
prep. So
Right,
all of
good
that
point.
has to occur too.
That's right. Good point. Good point. Doesn't just happen. Right. Okay, I think, has everyone said everything they need to say about this? You have enough clarity from council about what's
One other
next?
piece that we'll be bringing back is a recommendation on the dollar amount for the council here.
Right.
Is for you to take action. We won't go through a whole work session on that. I presume we
That's
won't need
good.
the full 60 minutes, Chris, on that one.
It might be interesting to know what organizations, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what organizations people are currently members of, so
That would be a good piece of information.
it might be helpful to know what we're actually looking for in terms of what are some of those organizations. Maybe you know, or maybe the council could be helpful to staff by letting staff know what are those organizations, so they're not just,
Know all that. Apparently, we know a lot about it.
oh, we know a lot about it. Okay, all right, that's good. All right, thank you. I think we're adjourned.
Do the consent calendar?
Oh, we could do the consent calendar. Good idea. Good idea.
We'd want to pull item C.
Do we want to pull? Yes.
That's what Catherine's going to prepare.
Catherine's going to prepare that.
I can jump on in and tell you what a different suggested motion could be, which is move to adopt Resolution 5205, amending Eugene City Council operating agreements and repealing Resolution 5043 and adding an amendment to Section 2.02, Council Poll, to change 5 working days to 2 weeks.
So moved.
Second? Somebody second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Claire?
So just in terms of being specific, is that 14 days, and is that 14 working days? Is that 14 calendar days?
14 calendar days is
It
how
would
we
be
would.
14 calendar days is how that would be interpreted. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All.
Wait, I have a
You
question.
do, okay.
Repealing Resolution 5043, what's that?
The previous resolution adopting the prior version of the operating agreement. The version that you have in front of you was adopted, that's being amended, is being adopted by 5205. 5043 was the resolution that adopted the earlier version of it.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So all in favor? Wait, are we clear?
No, I was raising my hand in
He's
favor.
ready to vote. He's ready to vote. Okay, are we ready to vote?
Is this is
Just on the item C?
Just on
Just
we're
on
gonna-
C.
Just going to vote on item C, right? What, are we?
Hold on 1 minute. There
Good.
seems to be a little hitch in the giddy up.
All right.
We're talking about the work session polls, right?
Yes.
So when we had your process session in January, you guys all unanimously said that we're here. Councilor Pulling was here at the time. You wanted to have 14 days, but you wanted staff to call after 1 week if you hadn't replied. So you physically wanted a nudge, and I think that's what we've been doing. So if you're going to take a vote and actually amend the thing to change it, and you still want that nudge, I was just going to say we should put that in there as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Adding
Go ahead,
nudge.
Catherine.
We're going to.
Friendly amendment.
Nudge, plus nudge,
With a nudge at 1 week.
with a nudge at 1 week.
Yes.
Technical term.
Nudge.
A reminder to vote.
While she's doing that, we can approve the
Staff will
consent
contact.
except for
Yeah.
item C.
Okay, so
I'll move approval of the consent calendar except for item C.
Second.
all right, any discussion about that? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, now,
Okay. I think nudge means reminder.
yeah.
Okay. Let's do this. Here we go. Let's try this again. Okay, sorry. Move to adopt Resolution 5205, amending Eugene City Council operating agreement and repealing Resolution 5043 and adding an amendment to Section 2.02 Council Poll to change 5 working days to 2 weeks with an individualized reminder at 5 working days.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great, it passes. Well done. Thank you. And we are adjourned until 7:30.